Greetings, viewers, and welcome back to Just Short of Fantastic. It's June, and that means it's Pride season. Happy Pride! I hope everyone is having an amazing and safe time this month and every month. And this month, for Pride, we are doing Peter Pan, which for some unknown reason, I went into my DVD cabinet and discovered that I have two different discs of Peter Pan. I have the special edition and I also have the platinum edition. We're going to be talking about Peter Pan, that boy who refused to grow up, which you would think would have a lot of like queer subtext and like concepts, but actually no, not really. Anyway, so let's get into it. Also, I didn't mention it, but Cinderella passed the racism check with flying colors. Peter Pan will not. Peter Pan, or The Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up, is the work of Scottish novelist J.M. Barrie in the form of a 1904 play and a 1911 novel titled Peter and Wendy. The play and the novel were inspired by Barrie's friendship with the Llewellyn Davies family, with whom Barrie had a close relationship. Barrie was friends with Sylvia Llewellyn Davies, and in telling stories to her 5 sons, the character of Peter Pan was created. When Sylvia died a few years after her late husband, Barrie became a co-guardian of the boys and unofficially adopted them. The play, first staged in 1904, has a history of casting women in the title role, as a man could not realistically play the part of a young boy, with Nina Boucicault originating the role at the Duke of York's theatre. The primary theme is the conflict between the innocence of childhood and the social responsibility of adulthood. Barrie and his story have been the cause for several controversies, one of which is the portrayal of the Redskins tribe with whom Pan interacts, leading critics to argue that the story has racist undertones. There has also been speculation that Barrie's marriage to the actress Mary Ansell was never consummated, and after his divorce he never remarried, but formed a special relationship with Sylvia Llewellyn Davies. Against claims of pedophilia, the youngest Llewellyn Davies' son, Nico, insisted that Barrie never behaved inappropriately, claiming, "I don't believe Uncle Jim ever experienced what one might call a stirring in the undergrowth for anyone, man, woman, or child. It is likely that Barrie was asexual." Barrie continued to revise the play until the publication of its script in 1928, and since its original production, the story has been adapted as a pantomime, still its most seen form in the UK, a stage musical, a television special, a live-themed ice skating show, and several films ranging from a 1924 silent film to the most recent Disney 2023 live-action adaptation. In the US, the original play has been supplanted in popularity by the 1954 musical version starring Mary Martin, which was made well-known by television broadcast. Among the many adaptations, the 1953 animated feature film by Walt Disney is also one of the best known, with Tinker Bell going on to become a mascot for the Walt Disney Company and the parks, with a series of animated movies of her own. First off, the source material. This is not the play. This is the Norton Anthology of Children's Literature, which I had to purchase when I was in university because I took a children's lit class, and it was honestly like one of the best courses I had to take during my BA B.Ed. J.M. Barrie's original play for Peter Pan is in here. It's not that long. It's like 20 to 30-ish pages, and it's a script, so like it's a very quick read. But yes, so I do have the original source material. I had to read it during this children's lit class. I think that was the first time I'd ever encountered the J.M. Barrie original play, and it's been many years since I've read it, so I reread it, and here are my thoughts for you. What I particularly enjoy about this final official play script is the dialogue is great, but the best parts are actually the like stage directions and like the setting descriptions. Those are all fantastic, especially if you are like a lover of plays and a lover of literature. They're delightful to read. And so the play actually opens, and I love that the setting description says, "The Darling House sits in Bloomsbury, where Peter Mark Roget, publisher of A Thesaurus of English Words and Phrases in 1852, once lived." So the opening location of Peter Pan is a compliment to the man who published the thesaurus, and that is queer AF. The first character that we see in the opening of the play is actually Nana the dog, and the stage directions say that Nana the dog should set the pace of the play, and that all characters must wear a child's outlook on life as their only important adornment. And I just think that is so delightful. Something that I really love about the original Peter Pan story that is used in some adaptations, but it is severely lacking in the original Disney animated movies, is the lore and the world building of Neverland, specifically about the fairies. It's very well known for anyone who's familiar with the original play or the musical adaptation starring Mary Martin, that fairies are born out of a baby's first laugh. And that when a child gets old enough and says, I don't believe in fairies, then that fairy dies. I grew up watching the Mary Martin Peter Pan. We had it on VHS. My grandparents had taped it from a broadcast. And I believe I watched that way more than I ever watched the animated Peter Pan. And that probably says a lot about me and what I grew up to become. I clearly remember the scene where Tinkerbell drinks the medicine that has been poisoned, that is meant for Peter, and she starts dying, and then Mary Martin as Peter Pan turns to the camera and the audience and says, you have to say that you believe in fairies, and that will cure Tink. And I remember being a child and just like my heart breaking and just saying into the TV, I do believe in fairies. I believe in fairies. And then, Tinkerbell gets better and everything's fine. But that is something that it seems really corny and cringy now, but I do believe it's an integral part of the Neverland lore and the story of Peter Pan are the fairies. They do have that in I think it's the 2003 live action adaptation that came out. They do have that whole scene, and it's a brilliant score when they go like around the world and all these people are saying like, I do believe in fairies. I do. But that scene is so beautiful, and that is such an important element to the story of Peter Pan, because the story of Peter Pan is about childhood and innocence lost. And if we're just watching a boy fly around being arrogant and mean to everyone, spoiler alert, then like something has gotten lost in the American translation from the J.M. Barrie original to the Walt Disney animated feature. We'll probably talk about that more as we get into it. Another really cute little thing in the play with fairy lore is really interesting aside that mauve fairies are boys, white fairies are girls, and there are some colors who don't know what they are. And I just think that's incredibly imaginative and progressive for the late 1800s, early 1900s, for someone to write that down. I mean, it's fantasy, but it's also very progressive in that we gender our boys and our girls with colors, but then we acknowledge that there are gender fluid or non-binary entities that will choose whatever colors appeal to them. That's delightfully refreshing. Okay, but as much as the original play is delightful and refreshing, there are a lot of racist problems with it. The introduction of Tiger Lily and the Redskins, the Pickaninny tribe, has not aged well, or was never good to begin with, but is especially offensive now. Pickaninny is actually an offensive term for a black child, so I am not sure why Barrie decided to call his natives that. So not great. And Peter will refer to himself as the Great White Father when he is interacting with the tribe, and they speak in broken English, and that is not good. So the ending of the original story is very different from most adaptations that I've seen, and it is that when Hook is defeated by Pan, he willingly walks into the crocodile's mouth and is presumably eaten. Pan takes the darling children and the lost boys back to England. However, he arrives first, and he and Tink close and bar the nursery window. Pan, thinking that if Wendy believes that her mother has given up on her, that she will return back to Neverland to be with him. But they arrive, and Mrs. Darling opens the window. She welcomes all of the children back in, and she allows Wendy to go to Neverland once a week to do Pan's spring cleaning, which, I'm sorry, what? But anyway, so there's an epilogue where Wendy does return to Neverland to help Peter Pan with his spring cleaning. This demonstrates Wendy's growth against Peter's stagnation, but what's really interesting is that Pan has forgotten the Lost Boys, he's forgotten Hook, he's even forgotten Tinkerbell. And as audience members, we know intuitively that, like, this is the last time Wendy will ever see Peter because she's already growing up. She needs a broom to fly to Neverland, which honestly is iconic. That's the end of the original Peter Pan, and it's really interesting. It's definitely meant to provoke thoughts in the audience about childhood and innocence, and what does it mean to grow up? What do we lose, and what do we gain in the process? Walt Disney had started considering plans to adapt Barrie's play into an animated movie as early as 1935, purchasing the film rights in 1938 and beginning preliminary development the following year. However, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the studio was contracted by the U.S. government to produce training and war propaganda films, and the Peter Pan project was shelved. The project was brought back to life in 1949, and Walt used live-action reference footage of actors on sound stages to assist the animators. Peter Pan would be the last Disney film in which all 9 members of Disney's 9 Old Men worked together as directing animators. The film was released February 5, 1953, and grossed $6 million in North America and $2.6 million internationally, and has been re-released to theaters multiple times prior to home video availability. Adjusting for inflation, Peter Pan has had a lifetime gross of $427.5 million. Critics received the film with general positivity, with the visuals and animation garnering high praise. Walt's version was criticized, however, for diverging too far from the spirit of the original play, and many critics noted that the songs weren't at the level expected from a Disney presentation. The song What Made the Red Man Red has been particularly criticized in retrospect as racist, and the portrayal of the native tribe has been a lasting controversy for the film. The tribe was notably left out of the 2002 direct-to-DVD sequel Return to Neverland. Despite the controversy, Peter Pan remains a beloved classic in the Disney canon of animated films. When I sat down to re-watch Peter Pan for this vlog, I did not anticipate how angry and upset I would feel during the experience. Like I said, I watched the Mary Martin musical a lot growing up. We had this, and I'm sure I watched it multiple times. Maybe it was Tinkerbell, the fact that I love Tinkerbell, and like the music and like the animation is gorgeous, but like I didn't realize how awful this movie actually is. Like this specific one, not the story of Peter Pan. There are lots of Peter Pan movies that are fantastic. 2003 one like being a high watermark for that specifically, but like this 1953 animated Peter Pan is atrocious. It's awful. It's like I was taking notes through my viewing, and I basically came to the conclusion that this entire movie is just a series of sexist and or racist tropes. That's it. It's going from one sexist and or racist trope to the next with like a jaunty song in between to make you forget that it is sexist and racist. And it's so awful. Like every single scene is either about like the jealousy of girls, or it's about like the Indians and just all of these racist caricatures. And it's so bad. It's so bad. Okay, but there were a couple of things that I wanted to talk about a little bit in depth, so here we go. The first time that we see Tinkerbell, we see that she likes music and she likes to look at herself. Nothing wrong with that. But she does become very concerned about the size of her hips when she's looking at herself. And I don't love that. She's a fairy. Why does it matter how big her hips are? The whole thing is just very gendered, and Wendy is constantly being undermined by the other female characters or by her brothers. Just like being like, oh, Wendy, like, you're a girl, you don't understand. And just like, it's awful. It's just really awful. But I do appreciate the queer coding of Captain Hook, because again, it's a Disney villain, so of course he's queer coded. He's very like effeminate, effete. He plays the piano. Oh my gosh, the scene where he's playing the piano with his hook and manipulating Tinkerbell into telling him where Peter's hideout is, just like iconic. Iconic. But of course, we've queer coded Captain Hook. He's the villain. Even his crew hates him because they think he's obsessed with Peter Pan and they just want to go back to open sea and return to a normal, healthy life of pirating. And the only person who seems to care about him at all is Smee, who is just like dedicated and loyal. And so there's like a bit of queer coding there as well. I also, like, I understand, but I don't love that the trauma of the crocodile attack is being played for laughs. Like, I get it, he's the villain, we're not supposed to care about him, but like, that's trauma, and I don't love when a trauma is played for laughs. I also just, all of the racist stereotypes about the Indians. When the mermaids try to drown Wendy and Peter laughs, until Wendy defends herself with a shell, and suddenly it's like, oh no, she's violent, ah! I'm like, good for you, Wendy. All the times when somebody says something racist or sexist, like, the Indian is cunning but not intelligent. Ew. A jealous female can be tricked into anything. Ew. After Peter Pan saves Tiger Lily and he is made an honorary chief. Ew. When Tiger Lily is giving Peter Pan a private ceremonial dance and then they do an Eskimo kiss. Ew. In the song about the Indians, they're all red because they are blushing. Ew. When Captain Hook is manipulating Tinkerbell and says, oh, don't blame Peter for his ill treatment of you. It's that Wendy who's to blame. Ew. I did enjoy the sequence where the pirate crew sings and dances to entice the children to join up to Captain Hook's crew. I thought that was fun, but yeah, that was pretty much it. Yeah, so the end of the animated version is that the Darlings return home, the Lost Boys go back to Neverland because they're not ready to grow up yet, but Wendy is. And then they see the pirate ship floating in the sky, and George Darling goes, I've seen that ship before. And like a glazy, nostalgic look comes over him. And he says to his daughter, like, you don't need to leave the nursery. There's still time to be a child. And so I don't really know what the message was intended to be in this version. Because, like, if the movie is supposed to be about Wendy growing up, then the whole time she's in Neverland, she's never really treated like a person. She's always kind of treated as, like, an object. Pan brings her back to tell stories about him. And then he sort of, like, shows her around, but she's always the target of other female jealousy. Her brothers are constantly undermining her. everyone around her is like, oh, girls don't do this, girls don't do that. And okay. So she sees that she's already excluded from all of the fun things just by virtue of her gender. And so, like, other than the beginning of the movie where you see Wendy and her mother have a close relationship, and Wendy obviously, like, adores her mother and thinks she's beautiful and charming. And we can sort of read into that Wendy, you know, is looking forward to being a woman like her mother. I don't really see the character arc of Wendy, like, wanting to be like her mother and then going on this adventure, realizing that she's excluded from all of the fun, not because she's too old, but because she's a girl. And so I think they fumbled this one. I think they fumbled it really bad. Because when she gets home, she's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely ready to grow up, because if I can't have adventures because I'm a girl, then why shouldn't I become a woman who can have some independence and can make choices for herself? That's kind of the read I get from the 1953 animated movie, but like, I'm sure that's not the intended read. So unintentionally or not, I think Disney really missed the mark on this one. However, because of the decision to remake all of their classic animated movies into live action adaptations, 70 years later, the Walt Disney Company had another chance to make it right. Did they? We'll find out. In April 2016, after the financial and critical successes of Maleficent, Cinderella, and The Jungle Book, the Walt Disney Company announced that a live-action Peter Pan movie was in development. With casting underway in January 2020, the film was retitled Peter Pan and Wendy, and principal photography was scheduled to start in April 2020. Worldwide lockdowns for COVID-19 delayed production, and in December of 2020, it was announced that the film would be debuting on the streaming service Disney+. Filming began in March 2021, and the film was released to Disney+ on April 28, 2023. To address the racist controversies of earlier versions, the cast of the 2023 adaptation is markedly diverse, with Alexander Maloney in the title role of Peter Pan, Yara Shahidi as Tinkerbell, and Alyssa Wapanata, a Cree First Nations actor, as the reimagined Tiger Lily. The Lost Boys were also reimagined to include girls, and it is notable not only for the group's diverse ethnicities, but also for casting Noah Matthews Matovsky, an actor with Down syndrome, as Slightly, the leader of the Lost Boys. Matovsky is the first actor with Down syndrome to land a major role in a Disney film. The live-action remake received mixed reviews, skewing generally to the negative, although the cinematic vision of director David Lowery and Jude Law's performance as Captain Hook were highly praised. Honestly, I have nothing but good things to say about the 2023 live-action adaptation Peter Pan and Wendy that went straight to Disney+. Except for maybe the fact that it went straight to Disney Plus and we didn't get a chance to have this movie in theaters, to have more of like a national conversation about all of the casting decisions and the issues that they brought up in it, which we're gonna get to. Don't want to bury the lead here. I loved it. It's great. And this is just gonna be like a list of all the things that I loved. So the movie opens much like the animated version in the House of the Darlings, and we're introduced to the family. The boys are sword fighting. One of them is Captain Hook, one of them is Peter Pan, and then Wendy is like being told by her mother that she has to pack for an early train. We get this really nice interiority of Wendy that she's going off to boarding school. She's feeling really hesitant and resentful about that because she's not looking forward to growing up to a life of motherhood. And so when an opportunity comes for her to jump in with her brothers and start sword fighting, she relishes it. But her mother says, you have to be a leader for them. You're their older sister and they look up to you. Soon they'll be going to boarding school and they need to look to you as an example of someone who goes with their head high. To me, that is exactly what the animated version was missing. It was missing this character arc for Wendy. She wants to go on adventures. She isn't quite ready to grow up if growing up means becoming a mother. And so right away, I'm like invested. It's really good. I also love that George Darling, played by Alan Tudyk, is not a buffoon in this version, which I didn't talk about during the animated, but like I didn't love that either. And so that's great. I love the diverse casting of we get a black Tinkerbell and we have a brown Peter Pan. Fucking love that. So amazing. I am here for that. I love that they return to the idea that a kiss is a thimble, which is really big from the original play, and it's in a lot of the other adaptations that the animated version just kind of cuts completely. I love that Tinkerbell is actually nice and helpful and is trying to communicate with Wendy, but Wendy can't hear her. Although by the end of the movie, she has learned to listen and to hear Tinkerbell, which is again just an amazing part of her character arc. I love the introduction to Captain Hook. It's way more menacing, it's less dandyish. He's just like greasy and dirty, and you can tell that like he's just become this bitter old man, and it's fantastic. Jude Law is just doing so much with this role, and I love it. And his crew actually likes him. Smee, played by Jim Gaffigan, is delightful. He's just so like fatherly, and you get more lore about like their relationship as well, which is really nice. I love the updated Tiger Lily, who is played by Cree Canadian actress Alyssa Wapanata, and I love that in the movie she is speaking Cree. A lot of it is not translated, which is fantastic. He meets Wendy alongside the Lost Boys when Wendy is by herself, so there's no interference from Peter Pan or from her brothers, and I love the dynamic of that. And you can tell right away that there's an understanding between Wendy and Tiger Lily that plays out through the movie, which is fantastic. And alongside the Lost Boys, I love the diversity of them. I love that they are boys and girls. I love that they are all different ethnicities. I loved that the leader of the Lost Boys, Slightly, is played by Noah Matthews Matovsky, who is an actor with Down syndrome. He is, in fact, the first actor with Down syndrome to land a lead role in a Disney movie, and that is just amazing. See, this is one of those things that like I wish this movie had been in theaters, because we need this representation in theaters, and it would have been great to have this national conversation about people of different ethnicities, people of different genders. I know there's an ongoing conversation about the proper terminology for people with conditions such as Down syndrome. I know differently abled is no longer a thing that we say, and you're supposed to say like person with Down syndrome, actor with Down syndrome, but I still struggle around like a term for that group of people. If anyone knows, please educate me. I definitely know that these casting decisions didn't really make any waves for good or bad. But anyway, okay. I also really love that throughout the movie there are 2 pirate songs. There's a shanty shortly after they get to Neverland, which is an absolute bop, and then there's a much slower ode when the children are being forced to walk the plank, and that is also just amazing. So I love that. Again, the 2023 adaptation is not a musical, but the pirates do sing, which is just like super queer. We love that. We love sea shanties. I also really love the change in that it is John and Michael who are kidnapped by the pirates like immediately upon arriving to Neverland, and it is Tiger Lily who actually leads the rescue on Skull Rock to save the 2 boys, and she leads Wendy and the Lost Boys, and Peter Pan just shows up later, and I think that's amazing. I love that there's a lot more pathos between Hook and Pan. We get more of their backstory and their relationship to each other, and that's all really like interesting and psychologically deep, and there's a lot of like underlying concepts and themes there that one could theoretically talk about for a very long time, but it is not this one. After the Skull Rock rescue, they return to the hideout, And Wendy and Tiger Lily are sort of the last two to go inside, and Wendy is looking. She already at this point has the feeling that she's too old for Neverland, but like she's still trying to find like the adventure and the joy. But Tiger Lily notices that, and they have this really great conversation about growing up and finding your independence. And Tiger Lily says this beautiful thing to Wendy. She says, "Feel the ground beneath your feet so your eyes can find the stars." I love that. I love that so much. I'm gonna cry. It's such a beautiful thing to say to someone. It's just this beautiful moment of like female empowerment and solidarity. And I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna say it again because it's Pride and we should all be supporting each other. Feel the ground beneath your feet so that your eyes can find the stars. I also love that Tiger Lily remembers Wendy's full name and says it back to her just before they part. And I'm not gonna lie, there was just like the tiniest bit of a lesbian tension there where I was like, oh damn, Tiger Lily be memorizing her full name. Honestly, I really wanted something to happen between them, but like, it's a Disney movie, of course it's not going to. But that's what fan fiction is for. And then we get like a whole lot more of the backstory between Hook and Pan. And basically James and Peter were on Neverland together as boys, and James one day was like, I miss my mother and I want to go home. And Peter just like flew off the rails. They got into a huge fight. He banished James away from Neverland, and James tried to get back home, but he couldn't, and that's when he was picked up by Smee and the pirates, and he worked his way up and became their captain. And so like that underlying theme of like missing your mother and the betrayal of that from Peter's perspective, that's a lot of really interesting psychological stuff that one could definitely get into if one had more time. But that is not this one. So yeah, there's a lot going on there that we're just gonna breeze over. I love that as Wendy is walking the plank, she realizes that she has to save herself. And so she starts thinking happy thoughts so that her flight will activate. And I love this very brief montage that shows Wendy's happy thoughts are all of her growing up, growing old, but being independent and happy and just so satisfied. And I'm gonna cry again. Like this montage makes me cry like every time I watch it. And it's just so beautiful and so empowering. That returns to her the power of flight. And then like she rallies everyone, and Tiger Lily, who meanwhile has rushed back to Pan's hideout because Pan and Hook fought, and Pan was defeated by Hook, and he's been injured and he's presumably dying. And so Tiger Lily rushes to go and rescue him, and she does, and she cures him, and then they ride together on her horse to the ship, and she helps him get on the ship, and then that's when he and Hook have their final battle. And I absolutely love that Pan apologizes to James. And while there are still some troubling concepts about masculinity presented in this film, we're giving the 2023 live-action adaptation Peter Pan and Wendy a Queer Joy rating of 5 out of 10. The pirate shanties, the empowering updates to all female characters, the inclusivity among the Lost Boys, all make this remake a vast improvement over the 1953 animated version. So that brings us to the end of our Queer Joy look at Peter Pan. I hope everyone has a safe and happy Pride, and until next time, stay just short of fantastic.